Hi everybody, welcome to this week's video. Today I'm going to talk about some important historical and cultural background for Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar is an incredibly important play because it underlines and shows some important themes about the Roman Empire. What does the Roman Empire have to do with us? Well, judging from viral TikTok videos that reveal that American men think about the Roman Empire at least once a day, to Caesar salads, to the institutions of our modern day political government, it's clear that we are still obsessed with Rome. A fun fact for any Star Wars fans in the house: the political backdrop of Star Wars is based upon Rome. As it turns out, the story of a scrappy, independent republic fighting for its survival but then succumbs into becoming a powerful but cruel empire didn't just happen in a galaxy far, far away. It's the story of Rome. Let's talk about Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was first performed in the Globe Theatre in 1599. It's part of what's known as Shakespeare's Roman plays. The script includes Antony and Cleopatra, the sequel to Julius Caesar. Antony and Cleopatra is about the love story of Mark Antony and the beautiful Egyptian queen Cleopatra. The script also includes Titus Andronicus, Shakespeare's early play, which was performed in 1594. It includes Coriolanus, which was performed in 1609. And it also includes The Rape of Lucrece, which is not really a play, but it's a long narrative poem that is about the origins of the Roman Republic. The source for Shakespeare's material on ancient Rome is Plutarch's The Parallel Lives of the Noble Greeks and Romans, which was a Latin text that was translated into English in the Renaissance. Something interesting about Julius Caesar is that it's a play that has a close connection with American history. This was one of the favorite plays of many of the founding fathers, and it's also believed to be the inspiration for the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln by John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth was a Confederate supporter, and he viewed Lincoln as a tyrant in the model of Julius Caesar, whom it was his Republican duty to eliminate. Shakespeare's Julius Caesar is the story of Caesar's assassination by some of his closest friends and collaborators, including Brutus. But more than that, it's a story of how these events impacted Rome's transition from a republic into an empire. Given the impact that this transition had upon Rome's political and cultural identity, and arguably upon our own cultural and political identity, given how influential in Rome is for us, I'm going to give you some historical background upon Rome. The mythic origins of Rome are associated with the story of Romulus and Remus, the twin boys left on the banks of the river Tiber, and who are found and nursed by a she-wolf who suckles them and who rears them. As the story goes, the two boys grow up and found the city of Rome, but in a fight over political power, Romulus kills Remus and becomes the first king of Rome. It doesn't really matter if the story is true or not. What matters is that the story captures something important about Rome's sense of its own cultural identity. The myth expresses the truth that Rome had very humble origins. The abandoned twin boys symbolize perhaps the fact that Rome was founded by criminals, by lower caste people, by outcasts and rejects from other Italian city-states. The image of the she-wolf suckling the two baby boys, the founders of Rome, expresses also the truth that there's something powerful and forceful, virtuous, but also predatory in the Roman personality. And the incidents of Romulus killing Remus, his own brother, expresses perhaps the truth that you cannot build a legendary empire like Rome's without violence and without civil conflict. Romulus is counted to be the first king of Rome, but then in 1509, something interesting happens. A group of Roman nobles get together and overthrow the tyrannical fifth king of Rome, Tarquin the Proud. These events are narrated in Shakespeare's poem, The Rape of Lucrece. This group of nobles is led by Lucius Junius Brutus, who is the ancestor of the character of Brutus that we meet in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. It's notable that after overthrowing Tarquin, these nobles decide not to appoint another king, but decide on self-rule, to create a republic. After creating the republic, something interesting happens to the Roman personality. They develop a sense of confidence, of mutual respect and shared values about what it means to be Roman. And this also increases their military aggressiveness. There's a sense that in learning to become masters of themselves, Romans come to envision themselves as masters of the world. It's important to note that the principle of self-rule within Rome didn't apply to everybody. The plebeian lower classes had to fight for decades to gain the right of political representation in Senate. Even so, wealthy political offices in the Republic were customarily limited to the patrician class. Slaves and foreigners had no legal rights or political privileges. Even so, the Roman Republic came to shape what it meant to be Roman in a way that echoes and resounds throughout Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. The ideal Roman was defined by a set of core values. They include the ideal of virtus, which is the masculine ideal of sacrificing one's own individual gain for the greater public good. This word is where we get the word virtue from. The Roman Republic also defined the ideal of service, or serving the community by actively seeking political office. Clearly, this is a value that we hold in our own political culture and that we have gained from Rome. Another important ideal is pietas, which is where we get the word piety from. Pietas is the respect for elders and the sanctity for family life. The ideal Roman man was supposed to protect the family and to uphold family values. Concepts like virtus and pietas were adopted by the Catholic Church after the Church gained power in 1312 CE, after the conversion of Emperor Constantine the Great to Christianity. The Catholic Church adopted these words and concepts from Roman religion and recontextualized them within the framework of Christianity. Another core Roman value is actively seeking honor and glory. And once again, this is a value that is incredibly resonant with our own contemporary culture. And something that's not exactly a value, but was just an everyday fact of life in ancient Rome was class division. In Roman society, there's a very strict sense of class segregation and class division, and as the Republic progressed, the mobility between classes did lessen over time. You have the patrician or the noble class. Most of the senators that we meet within this particular play are from the patrician class. We have plebeians or the lower class. So, for instance, in the beginning of Act 1, Scene 1, we have the cobbler, who speaks in markedly lower class English than the upper crust English spoken by Shakespeare's noble patrician characters. Let's talk about the immediate events described in Shakespeare's play. Shakespeare's Julius Caesar corresponds to events that took place in the waning years of the Republic between 59 BCE and 44 BCE when Caesar was assassinated. By this time, the Roman Republic has already been weakened by military expansions by Rome, the influx of wealth from foreign conquests, and the rise of wannabe dictators like Sulla. It is in this unstable environment that Caesar enters and gains political and military power, rising like a meteor. He gains incredible fame in 59 BCE in the Gallic Wars, which were the wars of Roman conquest over modern-day France, known as Gaul. Caesar leads the Roman armies and basically gains an absolute victory. Caesar is elected as consul in 59 BCE and forms a triumvirate, sharing political power with two other influential leaders, Pompey and Crassus. As Caesar gains increasing power and popularity, there is tension between him and the other members of the triumvirate. Eventually, he fights a civil war with Pompey between 49 BCE and 47 BCE. Caesar wins these civil wars. He then continues on his brilliant military career, expanding the imperial control and gaining Roman territory in Turkey, Spain, and Africa. Caesar is assassinated in 44 BCE by friends and colleagues in the Senate, who suspect that he wants to remake himself in the model of an absolute ruler and return Rome to the model of centralized monarchy and away from its republican identity. His death set off a series of civil wars, first between the supporters of Caesar, led by Mark Antony and Octavian, who was Caesar's nephew and adopted son, and the conspirators led by Brutus, Cassius, and Casca. After this first conflict, another civil war would break out between Mark Antony and Octavian for the ultimate destiny of Rome. As a coda to the story of Rome, it's perhaps inevitable that Rome would transform into an empire under Octavian, the ultimate winner of all these civil wars. Octavian defeats Mark Antony in 31 BCE, and in 27 BCE takes on the title of Imperator, which didn't originally mean emperor, but simply was a title under the Roman Republic referring to a military leader who had to assume emergency power in order to deal with a particular crisis. However, Octavian makes this office permanent, the seat and the holder of absolute power and authority and law in Rome. I think we can safely say today that the word emperor carries far greater weight of authority, power, and absolute control than does the title of king, which meant that the worst fears and nightmares of Brutus, Casca, and Cassius were ultimately realized. At the same time, Octavian took on the name and title of Augustus Caesar, transforming Caesar into the title of Roman emperors down the line. It is then ironic that while Julius Caesar himself never got to sit on the throne of Rome, his name became synonymous with absolute political power in Rome. To wrap up our conversation, I'm going to talk about Shakespeare's take upon these events. What are the core themes in Julius Caesar? And what do they say about this play's enduring appeal in our own culture today? The first theme is, how do we interpret the actions of Julius Caesar and that of Cassius, Casca, and Brutus? Is Caesar in fact a tyrant in your view? Or is he a great ruler and leader who was unjustly cut down in the prime of his career? Are Brutus, Cassius, and Casca traitors to the state and to the Roman people? Or are they in fact the heroic guardians of the Roman Republic and the values for which it stands? Another thing to consider is, what does political community mean in this play? What does the Republic stand for? And what does empire stand for? Something else to consider is the dynamic of authoritarianism and democracy. What is the right response when a political community chooses to resign its own freedoms to an absolute ruler? Caesar did indeed have ambitions of restoring Rome's monarchical model of absolute kingship. Then what's the response when the people seem to support him in it? When Caesar seems to be an incredibly popular figure among the public? You should also keep an eye out for the power of rhetoric and language as components of self-fashioning and political identity. At key moments in this play, the individual destiny of the characters and the greater destiny of Rome hinges upon their ability to marshal the power of language, of rhetoric, and to appeal to the public and to appeal to their own colleagues in the upper classes. So keep an eye out for that. What does rhetoric and communication mean in this play, and to what extent do we subscribe to those same values? Once again, going back to the theme of how to interpret the actions of the characters, what is the nature of virtuous, just, and/or effective action? Should we act on our principles? Should we act on our personal obligations to our friends and to people that we have relationships with? Or should our political and social actions be determined by utility, by our self-interest, and by the end justifying the means? So based upon how we determine we should act in politics and in society, this will shape how you will feel about the actions of the different characters within this play. Shakespeare is not going to tell you who is right versus who is wrong. Shakespeare is about showing you these shades of gray and letting you come up with your own decision about these important and weighty questions of political identity and personal responsibility. Lastly, I'm going to raise the theme of gender and political action. As we've discussed, women do not have independent political rights or legal responsibilities within this play. Rather, their role is supposed to be conscribed to the sphere of the family. That said, how do we interpret the role and the effectiveness of characters like Portia and Calpurnia? How do we feel about them as characters? What kind of power or insight do they wield within this particular space? With that, that's the end of the video. Good luck and see you next time.